Thank you for being here today and welcome to our Driftless Area Solar Co-op info session and Solar 101. My name's Bobby King. I'm the Minnesota Program Director with Solar United Neighbors. So who is Solar United Neighbors? Briefly, like the slide says, we're a community of people building a new energy system with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. And we help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And rooftop solar might also be a ground mount system on your farm too. So we really believe that locally produced solar energy is good for the local community. It's an important part of a sustainable, renewable energy system, and that this keeps our energy dollars in the community. And we want policy to make more of that happen at the local, state, and federal level. And we certainly don't want any policy barriers to making more of that happen. We've organized 240 solar co-ops since our founding in 2007, helped 4,669 homes, farms, and businesses have gone solars through the co-op process, and educated tens of thousands of folks about solar. Let's go to this next slide if we could. Yeah, thanks. So just a little bit about how we began. We began in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Walter, the boy on the left there, he's the son of the executive director, Anya Schoolman. And him and his friend, Diego, saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth and came home and told their mom, you know, we got to go solar. And they began looking into it. And they quickly found out it wasn't very easy. There were a lot of obstacles. There was a lot of conflicting information. There was only 2 installers in the area at the time, and they both had different stories about how the process works. And in short, it was daunting. But Diego and Walter knocked on neighbors' doors. They began organizing, wanting to do it as a group, wanting to bring people together to support each other. And ultimately, 45 homes went solar. Took 2 years, but that story got out, and Anya started getting calls from around the country, really, about how to make something like this happen. So the story is really about people. It's about grassroots engagement, and it's about working together to make more solar possible. So now, hit that next slide. So now we're in 12 states, as well as still very active in DC, and working to make our mission possible to more and more people. Let's see that next slide. I lost my place for a second, sorry. So how Solar United Neighbors helps you go solar. There's really 2 ways. I'll go through the individual membership on the right quickly because we're going to spend most of the evening talking about the co-op membership. But we do have an individual membership, and that's for people that want to go solar that aren't in a co-op area. And our staff will help you review proposals, give you ongoing advice and assistance. And the knowledge of our staff is really deep. We've got a lot of expertise in-house, and we work in 11 states, and I think we've heard about every single obstacle anyone can face, and have talked to people through most of them. And it's a $85 annual membership for that. And if you're going solar on your own, it's well worth it. But we're going to talk more tonight about the co-op membership. So it's a group process. It's about getting 50 to 100 neighbors together. Takes, depending on the co-op, 6 to 8 months to get a installer selected and panels starting to move on the homes. The group does select a single installer. That's part of the process. We get a bulk negotiated price because we're acting as a group. You get your own individual contract. The contract ultimately will be between you and the installer, and you get a free 1-year membership in Solar United Neighbors when you sign up for the co-op. So I think 14 people have signed up for the co-op. And hopefully after this info session, more are ready to do that. So the presentation tonight is going to be in 3 parts. We're going to go through solar technology first. We're going to go into more detail about how the solar co-op works. And then lastly, we're going to go into solar economics. And again, if you have questions, type them into the chat room, and we'll pause at the end of each section and make sure everyone's questions get answered. And Autumn is going to lead us in this first part of the solar technology.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. I'm gonna just get us started on the basics of solar technology, sort of Solar 101. And thanks for having me here, Bobby, this evening. I'm excited to be here. Again, I'm Autumn Long. I am based in West Virginia, and I oversee our programs in what we call the Heartland region, which includes West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Minnesota. So I'm looking forward to helping bring more distributed rooftop solar to the driftless area of Minnesota and help educate folks about the benefits of solar. So we're going to start at the very beginning with this technology piece, which is how do solar panels work? And the type of solar technology we're talking about here is photovoltaic or PV solar technology. Photovoltaics or PV technology actually converts sunlight into electricity. And this is the most common type of solar energy on the market today. There are other types of solar energy out there, including solar thermal technology. And that can be popular for things like pool heating, water heating applications. It's not as common in northern climates like Minnesota, and it's not what we do. So we're specifically talking about solar PV, converting sunlight into electricity. And we're going to go into each piece of this diagram in greater detail tonight, but I just want to start by giving you all a top level vision of how a solar PV system actually works on your home or business. The pieces are basically, you've got your solar array, your solar panels all wired together on your roof, and the energy that they create flows to your inverter, which is a piece of equipment that converts the direct current into alternating current, and we will talk more about inverters in a minute. Then that alternating current flows from your inverter into your home's electrical service panel and powers your home's electric appliances and electronic devices, just as it does from the electric grid. And after your home has consumed as much energy as it needs from your panels at that moment, excess energy then flows out through your home's utility meter into your local electric system and just flows right on down the wire to help power your neighbor's home or the next building down the street. So you are becoming a producer of power as well as just a consumer. And we're talking about grid-tied solar systems for the most part here. You're going to stay tied to the electric grid, so you're going to have full access to as much grid power as you need at any given time. We'll talk more about, you know, backup storage power and islanding, but this is generally how a grid-tied solar system works on the most basic level. So let's dive into each of these different components. When we're talking about a rooftop distributed solar array, there are a couple different terms that you're going to hear again and again, and it's okay if it's not entirely clear. Don't worry too much about it, about diving too deep into this terminology, but just to give you a sense, we're talking mostly about power and energy. So when we talk about power, we measure that in terms of kilowatts, or a kilowatt is 1,000 watts. So watts and kilowatts are the measurements of power and energy that we're talking about. And the kilowatts or power represents the capacity of your system to produce electricity. And typically a home is going to have a solar array size somewhere between 2 kilowatts, which is quite small, and 12 kilowatts, which is quite large. The average, I don't know what the average is in Minnesota, but here in West Virginia, it's about 6 kilowatts. And so that's the power, the capacity of your system to produce electricity. The other term you're going to hear a lot is kilowatt hours, and that's a measurement of energy. It equals power over time. It's what you get charged for by your utility company every month. You'll see the energy charge you receive represents how many kilowatt hours of electricity you've consumed over the course of that month. And when you think about, running a 6-watt LED light bulb for an hour, you will have consumed 6 watt-hours over the course of that hour. So it's energy, it's power over time, and that's how your installer will size a system to help offset the power consumption that you have from your utility over the course of the year. So we're going to start with a solar module or panel when we talk about each of these system components. A solar panel is made up of solar photovoltaic cells, those little rounded sort of bluish shiny pieces of the module there in that picture. Each of those solar cells does the work of converting sunlight to electricity, and each of those cells is wired together into that module or panel. Other pieces of this module include the encapsulants that it's encased in, tempered glass, an aluminum or steel frame, a backsheet, and a small junction box on the end. So each module or panel is then wired together to create what we call a solar array. That's what you see on homes, in fields, large scale, small scale solar. It's all made up of these individual modules wired together to form an array. The other main component of a solar PV grid-tied system is your inverter. And in some senses, the inverter is the brains of the operation. It does a really important task of converting direct current electricity, which your panels create, into alternating current electricity, the type of electricity that we use in our homes, that our appliances use, that our electronic devices use. So the inverter does that DC to AC conversion. And it also continually monitors the power flow from your panels into your home and into the electric grid. So there are 2 main types of inverters. The older type is known as a string inverter. This is one piece of equipment. It's about the size of a microwave. It usually goes on the side of your house near your electric meter, near your solar array, where it comes down from your roof. And it does that DC to AC conversion on the array level. So it takes all of the power from all of your panels and converts it into AC current at once. A newer type of inverter is called a microinverter. And as the name implies, this is a smaller piece of equipment. Rather than having one centralized inverter that performs this function for your array as a whole, a microinverter attaches to each individual panel, solar panel, and makes that AC to DC or DC to AC conversion on the individual panel level. This type of inverter is useful if you have a situation where you have some shading or where your panels are on different angles or pitches of a roof, and so they're going to get different amounts of sunlight at different times of day. The thing about a string inverter is it's only going to be able to convert the power based on the lowest output of the lowest producing panel. So microinverters help to maximize your solar array's efficiency overall because it's optimizing the power production from each individual panel. If you have a flat or an open roof with not a lot of shading, you might not need microinverters. And as you can see in the middle of this slide, there is a device called a DC optimizer that works with a centralized string inverter, and it helps optimize that DC to AC conversion at the panel level. So it sort of gives you the best of both worlds. It's a bit of a middle ground between microinverters and string inverters. So there's a solution for every situation, and your installer will analyze your site and your needs and design a system with a type of inverter that best fits your individual situation. there we have our inverters. So we've got our panels, we've got our inverters, and then next we've got our home electrical service panel. You know, as you see here, this is a pretty standard service panel. Generally, there's not a lot of upgrades or any upgrades that need to be done to connect your solar array into your electrical service panel. If your panel's full or if it's really old and it needs an upgrade, that may need to take place as part of your solar installation. We ask our installers who bid on our co-ops how much they are going to charge for an electrical service panel upgrade. So our co-op members know that going into it. If they need a service panel upgrade, that price will be established as part of the co-op bid, and you'll know what you're going to have to pay for it. It won't come as a surprise. The other main component is the racking that actually physically attaches the solar panels to your roof. And there's a racking solution for almost every type of roof. As you see here, these folks are installing on a pretty steep asphalt shingle roof. And sorry, I'm losing my cursor here. Okay, so there's the various types of racking attachments for different roof types. You've got a standard flashing attachment for asphalt shingle. There are ballasted types of racking systems for flat commercial roofs. If you have a standing seam metal roof, you can actually use clamps or clamps that will clamp onto the seams, and you don't even have to penetrate the roof at all. So that's a nice one. So there's various options for racking for many different types of roof. Here's an example of a standing seam metal roof with a solar array, and you can see the racking clamps onto the seams. And I know a lot of farm and ag buildings and commercial buildings have metal roofs, and a lot of homes actually in my area of the country have metal roofs too. So this is a popular type of application. Here we've got a ballasted system on the supporting beams of a commercial flat roof. And if your roof is not good for solar, or if you don't want to put solar on your roof and you have open space in your yard or land around your home or your property, a ground mounted system is also absolutely an option. Ground mounted systems they may be a little bit more expensive than a roof mount if the installer has to, you know, pour concrete footers and dig a trench and run conduit from the array to your home. It can add a little bit of expense to the overall system installation. But again, we ask our installers who bid on our co-ops exactly what they will charge for each different iteration of these options for our co-op members. So you'll know if you want a ground mount system, what that cost will be, just like you'll know about the rooftop cost. And it also offers some benefits. It's easier to access. So I know I've heard you all get some snow in Minnesota, and so being able to access your panels easily to brush the snow off of them in the winter is one benefit of a ground mounted array. And you can also position it really at an ideal angle and pitch to maximize the production, which may not be the case with a roof. Okay, so what do I mean when I say if your roof is good or isn't good for solar? There are a few different things to consider about your home, your property, when you're thinking, oh, is solar gonna work for me? One is the angle of your roof. Which way does it face? So a south-facing roof is really ideal. It gets the most hours of sunlight over the course of the day, over the course of the year. And so there was a time when you really needed a very purely south-facing roof to really do solar, but solar panels have increased in efficiency greatly over the past decade. And so now east and west-facing roof lines are also very commonly used for solar. And oftentimes an installer will do east and west, so you get morning sun and evening sun, and that can be a very fine application. North-facing roofs really don't work well for solar. In the northern hemisphere, they just do not get enough hours of sun over the course of the day and year to make it pay off. Of course, shading is an issue. Solar panels do require sunlight to produce power, although I have been surprised to see how much they produce even on very cloudy, overcast days. So direct sunlight is not always a prerequisite. But if you live in a heavily shaded location, if you've got a big, beautiful shade tree on the south side of your home, that can impact the production of a solar array on your site. And we don't want to encourage people to cut down a lot of trees to go solar, so it's something to consider on a case-by-case basis with your home or site. And then the third consideration is just like the actual physical space available on your roof to mount the panels. If your roof is broken up with a lot of dormers or skylights or different angles, that can limit the number of panels you're going to be able to physically squeeze in there. So those are the main system components. And I also want to talk briefly about backup power, because it's a very common question that people want to know about. And you might be surprised to find out that if the grid power goes down, your solar array will actually shut down as well. So if you have a purely grid tied solar PV array, you will not have independent power when the grid is down. And that is a safety feature of all modern grid-tied inverters. They automatically shut down your system when they sense the grid power has gone down, in order to prevent your solar system from backfeeding into the grid and potentially injuring a line worker who's working to repair whatever's wrong with the local power grid. So if you want backup power during grid outages, you need the addition of an energy storage system. And by that, I mean batteries. You need battery storage in addition to your solar panels. And it's important to keep in mind that solar panels produce energy. They do not store energy. So if you want stored energy on site that you can call upon and rely upon during a grid outage, you need that storage mechanism. You need batteries. So we will talk just real briefly about battery storage. We always ask for battery storage pricing and options for our co-op members. So you will have that available to pursue with the installer that's selected. And we also have more in-depth battery storage educational resources available for those of you who want to dive deeper into storage and how it works with grid-tied solar. The main reasons you might want to consider storage is if you experience frequent, prolonged utility outages, especially if you have critical loads at home, like medical equipment that requires electricity, or a well pump, which I know in my area of West Virginia, many people do not have city water and rely on well pumps for water. So that is a pretty, critical piece of equipment. And you may just be very interested in emergency preparedness and disaster preparedness. And I think this situation that we all find ourselves in now with a pandemic that's keeping us all at home and interrupting our normal daily lifestyles has definitely made a lot of people think about that and how to be prepared for the unexpected. So storage will get you backup emergency power. It doesn't have the same sort of financial turnaround or benefits that you will get from a grid-tied solar array. And Bobby will explain why grid-tied solar is a good financial investment with a good return later. Just to give you a sense of a typical backup power system, a backup battery system, we're using this example of this fictional family that we named the Johnsons because we're really creative like that. And the Johnsons in this fictional scenario lose power several times a year. It's out for an entire day, and it's really disruptive to their lives. So they decided to install solar with battery backup. A battery backup system is generally not going to run everything in your home like you're used to running it, just like you do with the grid. You're not going to be able to run the vacuum and the dishwasher and the dryer and everything else that you want to run. You're going to pick and choose the critical loads in your home that you want to power with that battery storage. And what those critical loads are is really up to you. It might be your refrigerator or freezer to make sure you still have, frozen stored food, perhaps a small microwave to cook with, lights and outlets to charge electronic devices like a phone or a computer. That's certainly pretty critical for most folks in the modern world. And your cable modem so you can get on the internet. That's what these Johnsons have chosen to power with their emergency backup storage. They did not choose to power, things like an electric stove, their clothes dryer, electric water heater. And so they're just being, sort of conservative about what they're powering with that limited amount of backup battery storage. This slide is just going to give you a very general ballpark cost example. If you're installing, a typical residential size solar array, and then you want to add on a typically sized backup battery storage system, you can see that it does add significantly to the cost. And so we just want you to be aware of that, both the limitations of battery storage and the cost. Not to be a downer about it, but we just want to give you a realistic idea of what you can expect if you choose to invest in battery storage. And if you want to learn a lot more, we do have a downloadable battery storage guide for homeowners. It's available at that link, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage, and I encourage you all to check it out. So we're going to go back to this focus on grid-tied solar now, because that's really the most popular and common application for residential solar. You may remember this slide from a little while ago. This is your typical simple grid-tied solar system, and Bobby's going to take over from here to tell you all about how that grid-tied system works with a policy known as net metering. So take it away, Bobby.
Autumn, thank you. And in the chat box, just say real quick if you can't hear me. I'm speaking pretty loud now, so I hope everyone can hear. Great, thanks. Move to that next slide, Autumn, and we'll talk about net metering. So what is net metering? It's really key to making the system pay for itself and actually pay for more than itself. It's pretty simple in concept, really. When you're using electricity from the grid, you're paying for it and your meter is running forward. But when your solar panels are producing more energy than you're using, that energy flows back into the grid. And since electricity wants to be used, it wants to find a load, it's your neighbors who are going to be using the locally produced clean energy that you're making on your home, your farm, or your small business. It's pretty cool. And then your meter will actually run backwards. Let's look at the next slide. So it's pretty simple math. It's the amount of electricity used minus the amount of electricity produced will end up being your monthly electricity bill. So some months you will have a credit that will roll forward. And this is also important because for many people, the time that you're really generating the most electricity during the day is time when you're not home using much electricity. So this allows the system to financially make sense. And it also creates a more resilient grid as we have more sources of locally produced clean energy. And this next slide is pretty cool, I think. I don't know how many people remember these, but I remember staring at them as a kid and yelling at my sister to go turn on the electric heater to watch it go faster, because my mom and dad always yelled at me about how much electricity electric heaters use. But this is a picture the director of our Ohio program took of his old school meter running backwards. And I don't know if you can hear the sound, but if you could, there's birds chirping. So that's just a fun picture. I don't know if we're in a digital world now, but for those of us that are still lucky enough to have our analog meters, that's a pretty cool thing to watch. let's move to the next slide now. So want to just go through some frequently asked questions and then open it up for more questions. So warranties. There's really 3 types of warranties you'll be looking at with your solar system, your solar panel system. One is the warranties on the panels. And those are, the industry standard for that is 25 years. So they're guaranteed to produce at 80 to 87% of their capacity after 25 years, which is really a pretty incredible warranty and shows how reliable the technology is now. And that doesn't mean that on year 26, they're no good. They're not under warranty anymore, but they'll likely still be producing. Inverters, the string inverter is usually 10 to 13 years. A micro inverter and DC optimizer are 25 years. Then you're going to look at the labor warranty, and that's going to depend on your installer, and that's something that, as you decide on what installer you want, will be something you consider, and it's 2 to 10 years depending on what they offer. Homeowners insurance, it shouldn't increase your homeowners insurance, but occasionally people will run into cases where the insurance company does want to raise your rates. You're going to have to shop around, and that's something that the Solar United staff could help you navigate too if you run into trouble there. Maintenance. So there's no moving parts on these panels, so they're very low maintenance. Snow, if they're at a decent angle, tends to slide off them. Like anything else, you're going to track them, and there's apps that connect to your panels if you want, that will give you updates on how they're doing. But they're not no maintenance, but they are low maintenance. If anyone lives in a homeowners association, that's what HOA stands for there. Sometimes they have rules and restrictions that need to be navigated. And then I don't think this will apply too much in the driftless area, but sometimes in historic districts, you can run into trouble with rules and regulations about where and how you can put panels up. So, Jessica, were there any more questions that came up that Autumn or I need to field? Anybody got a question on this section before we move forward?
I have one question from Nora, and Fritz was actually able to answer it in the chat, but if he wants to share more, it'd be really helpful. She says that she has a transformer on her property, and she was just wondering how that works with solar.
Sure. You guys can all hear me okay? All right. Kind of the short answer is it's generally not a problem. It largely depends on the size of the transformer and maybe how many buildings or other houses are on that transformer line. Transformers can handle a certain degree of power reversal before they have any problems. So it's kind of a situational problem where if there is a need for a transformer upgrade, sometimes the utility will split that cost with whoever's putting the solar on their house, or sometimes they'll just take that cost and spread it across the cooperative membership or the utility, because the transformer is considered a part of the common electric grid.
Thank you. That's actually, I haven't heard that question before. We have a really good question from Dana. She asks, is there a specific type of inverter I will need now if I want to leave myself the option of going for battery storage in the future?
Well, Bobby, did you want me to?
Sorry. Yeah, Autumn, could you take that? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, there are specific types of inverters that you would need if you plan on adding backup battery storage to your array. So it's a great idea to talk to your installer about that up front, and they can design a system with the appropriate equipment that will make it really easy for you to add on that additional component in the future.
Awesome, thank you. I have one more question also about inverters. It's from Tim. He asked, do you have to right size your inverter with your array, or could you expand your array later?
Yeah, another great question regarding inverter sizing. Yes, inverters are sized, in relation to the array. So just like if you think you want to add battery storage later, if you think you might want to expand your array later, let your installer know that up front, so then they can provide you with the appropriately sized inverter or inverters to accommodate that expansion.
Thank you. Great question.
Then I see there was one more question about homeowners insurance. Does it cover storm damage? I don't know. Does Autumn or Fritz?
Yes,
or...
that's exactly the kind of situation where, if there's a flaw in the actual equipment, the manufacturer's warranty will step in and cover that. But if something, an act of nature occurs on your property, a tree falls on your house and smashes your roof, damages your panels, that is when your homeowner's insurance would step in and cover that, just like any other damage to your home. And so it is really important to let your homeowner's insurance know that you went solar. That's when I went solar, my installer pretty much like finished, the last wiring and was like, go call your homeowner's insurance right now. So it's a good idea to let them know you have that.
Great, thank you. Let's take one more question and then before we go on to the next section.
The requirements for the transmission lines, I think the lines coming to your house or farm will work. Am I getting that right, Autumn and Fritz? That's my understanding.
The only exception is if you still have old fuses. That's when you rewire, and that I do come across that on occasion on old farm buildings. And that is you want to rewire your barn to hold breakers. Right.
Then before we move on, the last question is about recycling. The industry is really serious about recycling. There's a recycling plant in Wisconsin. Solar panels are uniform, so they're figuring out how to break them down and reuse the parts. Also, there's a secondary market for them. Someone that wants the latest and the greatest panel is going to buy new, but there's always someone like me that's happy to drive a 10-year-old car and save a bunch of money. So the recycling issue is it's real, but I feel good about how the industry's taking it seriously. All right, how the solar co-op works. Let's talk about that. So why go solar with a co-op? First of all, you're going to get a better value on the installation cost. You're going to get support throughout the process from Solar United Neighbors staff and also each other. You're going to be doing it in a community that's interested in solar and making more solar possible. And you're going to become part of the solar movement, which really, when we talk about solar movement, we mean locally produced distributed solar energy. So it's exciting and a lot more is happening. Let's next slide here. So here's the nitty gritty on the how the solar co-op works, the steps. So first of all, what do we mean by solar co-op? We just mean a group of people working together to go through the solar process together, tap into the expertise here at Solar United Neighbors, and get the best price from an installer. It's not a legal entity, and joining the co-op is free, and there's no obligation. We do ask that it means you're serious about going solar and want to do it if you can. Situations change, finances change. You thought you could do it and you can't, that's fine. But it's for folks that are serious about it and want to do it with neighbors and trying to find a better price. So the first step in the process there, that number one, is to learn about solar and learn about the process, and that's what we're doing tonight. We're going to have future webinars, and we'll need everyone on the call's help in recruiting for the future webinars and recruiting people to be in the co-op. Some folks will watch the video online and just join the co-op. But we'd like to get to 75 people in the co-op, and we're going to need everyone's help to get there. So then you sign up for the co-op. So what happens when you sign up for the co-op? We've got 14 folks have signed up so far. Jessica will do an analysis of your roof via Google Earth to do an initial assessment of if your property or your home is going to work for solar. And this is part of getting the better price from the installers. We're bringing the installer a group of people that are kind of pre-qualified for solar. Their property is going to work more than likely, and they're interested and ready to go. And you'll get, once you sign up for the co-op and put your address in there, you'll get a yes, no, or maybe response from the Solar United team about the feasibility of your property. Be sure to ask questions if it doesn't make sense to you, the answer you get. Satellite imagery can be old or out of date, and with shading issues, sometimes it's hard to get it right. And we are good about responding, so engage us and we'll get back to you. Then the third part is, again, growing the solar co-op. We're gonna do a lot of work on that, media-wise, calling folks, but really you're the best messenger for this. The people you know in your circles, people you communicate via email, your church, friends, family. They're going to take your word for it much more than mine that this is an opportunity to take advantage of. We have another webinar May 13th that will be very similar to this one. And then on May 19th, we have one that's focused on grant and financing opportunities available to farms and rural businesses. So the next part of the process, number 4 there, is to select an installer. And we'll put out a request for proposals once we have about 20 to 30 signups, people interested in going solar. And this is when being part of a solar co-op and Solar United Neighbors, you'll really see the deep value in it. We're gonna get back, we give installers 2 weeks to get back to us with their RFPs. And we'll also in the RFP be asking them how they are dealing with the COVID crisis and installing while doing social distancing. Solar installers are essential workers, so they're able to work now. They are working now, and they'll more than likely be able to continue to work. And the reason that installers want to get back to us is we're really bringing them a base of educated, ready to go customers. So when you join the solar co-op, you're going to be asked if you want to be on in the selection committee. So the selection committee, we like to get 5 to 15 folks on that. And they're going to take a look at the bids and make a decision about which installer to go with. Also, when you sign up for the solar co-op, you're going to be asked, what do you most value from an installer? The best price, experience, a local installer, or some combination of that. So the selection committee is going to take that as their charge to use those values in picking out what installer they want to use. And Solar United staff will be there to help answer questions, but it is the selection committee that will make the decision. Solar United Neighbors, it's important to us to be installer neutral and to let the folks in the co-op make the decision. So another key thing that the Solar United staff will do, though, and Jessica will play a large role in this, is we'll take the bids we get back from installers and we'll put them into a uniform spreadsheet. So you're comparing apples to apples. And you'll get the uniform spreadsheet, and you'll also get exactly what the installers sent to us. And the selection committee uses that. We can usually do it in a single meeting of about 2 hours, and we've done a few online now and figured out how to make that work. So once we select that installer, we'll make an announcement that the co-op has selected an installer and who the installer is. We'll do a last push for memberships. We've scheduled this co-op to close on July 1. So we want to have an installer pick and at least our 75 by then. The bid price remains private. The installer is giving us a lower price, and it's part of the agreement that that price stays confidential to the co-op. So if you want to know what that is, join the co-op and you'll get it. Once the installer is selected, they'll begin reaching out to you individually to look at your home and get back to you with a contract. So the contract itself is going to be between you and the installer. Solar United Neighbors staff and the other co-op members are there to help answer questions. We've seen about every glitch or hitch that could happen, and will be very useful in helping figure out if something does go wrong. Solar United Neighbors does get $600 from the installer for each contract that's signed. We didn't used to do that, but actually co-op members found it pretty unbelievable that we were offering the service for no charge, and encouraged us to do it. Part of sustainability is figuring out how to fund your enterprise, and this is important to us. It also has not resulted, this referral fee hasn't resulted in the price to co-op members going up. And we'll look more closely at the price to co-op members compared to the general population in just a little bit. So then installation, permitting can take up to 2 months. Installation itself typically takes a day. And then there's got to be interconnection with the utility, and that can take up to a month. And the installer is really going to make sure all those steps happen. And again, Solar United Neighbors staff are here if you run into problems and need technical support. So then the last thing we want to do is have a celebration. We want to celebrate our hard work together, and we want to let other folks in the community know how much solar energy we're producing now on our homes, how many jobs we're helping to support. And we'll more than likely be looking at doing another round in the Driftless area at some point. So let's look at that next slide. So just want to re-emphasize this since it's really important about who picks the installer. So the members of the co-op who are on the selection committee, and that's open to anybody that has a little more time and really wants to dig in, and that's the benefit of being part of a co-op. People share their time and everyone benefits from it. And they'll look at price, equipment quality, warranties, experience, whether or not it's a local company, and pick an installer based on that. All right, the economics of solar. Let's hit that next slide. Let's see. All right. So the blue line is the national average for solar installation per kilowatt, and that's how it's priced. And the first thing to notice is how that blue line has really plummeted. The second line is the average price for someone that's in a co-op. And you can see that across the years, there's measurable savings. Let's hit that next slide there if we can. So this shows the different components of the cost of going solar and how they've changed over the years. So you see at 2010, the system that we're tracking was coming in at a little over $7 a kilowatt. And you'll see how it's dramatically decreased. The yellow is the cost of the equipment. And you can see how that has really reduced. And the important thing is the price has reduced as the quality has gone up. Solar has really hit its stride in the last 7 to 10 years. The labor costs have actually gone down as installers get better and the process becomes more uniform. But what's become a larger percent of the cost is what's called soft costs, procuring customers. So the co-op is able to reduce a lot of those soft costs. And that's a key to how we can engage with an installer to get a better price. So here's an example of pricing. Let's just look at the 4 kilowatt system. So average Minnesota solar pricing is $3.20 a watt, and that's how installers bid. So that'd be $12,800. Excuse me. There's a 26% federal tax credit that you will get once you install, if you install this year. So the net cost is $9,500. In the first year, you'll see below that you save $600. Estimated 10-year savings, $6,400. Then estimated lifetime saving, $17,900. And again, that's at 25 years, but your system is going to keep producing after 25 years. So the net profit on that after 25 years is $8,500. You can see on the 8 kilowatt system, and these are based off systems that roughly are designed to produce close to what you use. Let's move to the next slide. So here's an important thing to know and why the time is now if you can do it. The federal tax credit is decreasing. It was 30% in 2019. It's 20%, 26% now. It's 22% next year. And then for homeowners, it's 0 in 2022. It'll stay 10% for businesses going forward. But you know, we're working to get that extended, and we hope it will be, but we don't know that. What we do know for sure is this year you get 26%, and next year you get 22%. Let's go to the next slide. If you're able to do cash, that's great, but a lot of people, maybe most people, have to finance, and you will still get a payback period. You will still be able to make money. It will pay itself back over the 25 years and then some with financing. And here's some examples of that. We'll take the 15-year, the second column there. So if you use a home equity line of credit with an interest rate of about 4%, your monthly loan payment is going to be about $70. Your electric savings be about $50. So your net monthly payment is $20. And then after 25 years, you're $5,300 ahead. Let's do that. And that was with a 30% down. So this slide right here shows you the cumulative savings with solar, paying cash, and using financing. So the dark blue line is cash, and then the lighter blue line is with financing. And you'll see that at about year 13 with financing, you start going into you've recovered the costs of the installation. So you recovered it a little later, but you still do recover it. It makes sense, even with financing, if you plan to be in your home or at your business for that period of time. So this is just to review the financing options. You've got a standard loan. There's a homeowner line of credit. There's third-party ownership, which I don't know that will make much sense for folks in this co-op. And then I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention again, Foresight Bank has a real commitment to making solar loans and has actually designated loan fund for local solar, and they're a local, there's a lot of opportunity there. And then there are some grants for farms and small businesses. Let's move on to the next slide. And there's a Rural Energy for America program, REAP, Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing. There's a Minnesota Department of Ag Livestock Loan. And we're going to do a webinar dedicated to that on May 19th. And Fritz, you want to say just a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. I'll say a little bit. Those three programs are directed at commercial operations, farm businesses. Like Bobby said, the REAP program has been around. It's a farm bill program. It's been, I think, on the books since 2002, and it should be on the books through 2023. That has two deadlines. One of them just passed, and then the next one will be on Halloween. Property Assessed Clean Energy is run through, I guess for the Driftless region, it's run through the St. Paul Port Authority, which is a financing agency. Essentially, it operates similarly to an equity line of credit on your property that's paid back as a special tax assessment on your property tax bill. And those projects are designed to be cash flow positive, so you make a margin on your solar investment. The Minnesota Department of Ag Livestock Loan and Grant Program, should be grant program. That has an opening of mid-September and it closes in mid-December, and there's a decision that's made in usually the first week of February. And then there's some other Rural Finance Authority programs that are out there as well.
Fritz, thanks. And Autumn too is a real expert on the REAP program. And if that's something you're interested in, sign up for that May 19th webinar. And if you can't make it, we'll tape it, and you can watch it that way. And you can reach out to us separately from that too. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate all the presenters. And again, sign up for the Solar Co-op tonight or soon, and help spread the word. And once you sign up for the co-op, we'll be keeping you informed and engaged through periodic emails as we go through the process. And thanks everyone. Thanks for being together on this. Appreciate it.